Okay, so they are working with Briggs and Stratton. I don't know about any of you, but my lawnmower has a Briggs and Stratton engine on it. So they're a company that does parts and small engines. And they have a large factory in Murray, Kentucky. It was a pilot program last year. The partnership was initiated by the United Way that leads the coalition. The outreach, of course, is one of the main things to think about. And in their case, they used all of Briggs and Stratton's internal communication channels. They have sort of digital message boards up throughout their facility, so I know that the message was displayed on there. They had flyers throughout their factory. People had to sign up for appointments with the receptionist. And then the United Way, which works with does a lot of employer-based fundraising, included EITC and tax preparation outreach in their campaign presentations there. So the taxes were prepared by coalition volunteers in the Briggs and Stratton computer lab. They have a computer lab that they use for training purposes. And so the equipment in that case was provided by Briggs and Stratton, and the volunteers just had to show up and prepare the taxes. So it was a really good setup there. Employees could work with volunteers before or after shifts, on their off days, or on breaks. So in that situation, if they came in on a break, they could sit down and talk with a volunteer and get the tax return started, verify identification, etc., and then come back later to do a quality review and talk about the tax return. So there was a lot of flexibility for the employees. We served 10 taxpayers last year. Again, I'm not sure how familiar any of you are with Kentucky, but we're kind of a big basketball state, and little old Murray State University made it to the NCAA tournament last year, and unfortunately the first day that they had a site open at Briggs and Stratton was also a big basketball day. So I'm pretty sure that we could have doubled our turnout had it not been during a basketball game that we couldn't predict. So again, that goes to knowing your community, though, and knowing sort of not only what events to go to and what organizations to reach out to, but also what events to not set days up in conflict with.
Vickie, I've never heard that before, that you should check the NCAA March Madness schedule before scheduling your VITA tax site, but I think that's really a good thing to think about.
It might be.
I run the March Madness pool here at the Aspen Institute, so it's something I care about deeply. And
right,
two of us presenters on the call went to Michigan State University, so this is very important. But I'll turn it back to you now, Vickie.
But you're right. It's about knowing your community. I mean, if Friday night football games are the big deal, obviously you don't want to be trying to do outreach, well, in conflict with a Friday night football game. So unfortunately, this was a tournament, and we weren't able to predict how well Murray State would do. But we certainly have great hopes for next year of increasing that numbers, because it really was a good setup. Two of the things that we're going to do to increase those numbers there is get there sooner. Again, the volunteers were only able to get there in March, and for those of you who have done free tax preparation before, you know that's kind of a bit of a lull, because most of the people who know they're going to get refunds are trying to get their taxes done earlier. So that was a capacity issue, and we're trying to increase the capacity so that we can get there sooner and also do outreach sooner. So as the Purchase Area Coalition expands its financial education and asset building, those services are going to be offered at the employer-based sites as well. They've started with the tax preparation and are starting the process of partnering with agencies that will do financial education and other asset building work. So those services will be offered at the employer site as well. And they're looking at other employers in the area to see kind of where the growth might lead them. And then the other model that I want to talk about that has worked well for us is the mobile sites and ad hoc visits, which was spoken about a little bit earlier too. Eastern Kentucky is a very rural area. It's kind of hard to get around in, a lot of hills and valleys. Travel is pretty difficult. So in order to reach those communities, it's easier to reach those communities when we can go to them rather than having them come to a central location. So we actually have two mobile sites in our coalition, but one is in Eastern Kentucky, and it's managed by a staff person here at the Kentucky Domestic Violence Association, and she has set up so that at each location she goes to, she has at least one volunteer. Those locations are determined by partnerships with local agencies. Obviously, we need a place to take our mobile site, so we need buy-in from them to go and set up our equipment, to get people there, etc. So,
Vickie, just to be clear, you're not talking about a van or an RV that goes somewhere. It's not a mobile site. It's taking your equipment and people to a site in a community for a one-time, like a circuit rider, right?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
A barnstormer.
So it's not. We're not talking about a site on wheels, right?
No,
we're talking about taking your stuff to a place for one day or one session.
Right. So we have a bunch of computers that we can send out into the field. We have volunteers set up in those areas, and we have a site manager who is the KDVA staff person. And this is an arrangement with VITA. We can make up to 6 visits to any single location. And there's some technicalities here that I'm not going to get into, but basically it has to do with software licensing for the tax preparation software. So we can go to any one location up to 6 times. Other ways that you could do that, you could have sort of a home base, and that's what our other mobile site looks like. We have a home base, if you will, here in Frankfurt at KDVA offices, and we make ad hoc visits to surrounding counties. So we can go there to any location in a surrounding county up to 6 times and still be in compliance with the grant and our software agreements. So that's what the mobile site is, and then ad hoc visits are the visits that you're going to do from that mobile site. We rely on the partner agencies in the field to talk about scheduling and get that set up. We also, for the most part, rely on them for outreach because, again, they're going to be the experts in their community and the communication channels that are best used there. We do provide templates for flyers, for paycheck stuffers, press releases, and so on. Sometimes we work on getting the press releases out, but a lot of times that happens at the agency. So again, the mobile sites can use the same, when I say EFIN, that's really related to the software that's used, and then make ad hoc visits to multiple locations. So the benefits of these, you can provide this service without requiring as many resources as a permanent site would. You know, you're a lot more flexible with scheduling and with your equipment, and so pretty much we have, my coworker Andrea has 2 or 3 laptops and a printer and her cables and everything. So one of the important things is to make sure that your internet is set up. I will say that because there have been occasions where you get to a site and the internet doesn't work, or you don't have a password, or that sort of thing. So making sure your technology is in order first is really important. It really allows us to meet the need where it exists, and again, that flexibility is key. We have one location, for example, that's in a place called the Lord's Gym in a very rural Appalachian county, and it's a place that everybody knows, and they know it's, you know, turn left at the, you know, falling down barn and so on, but it allows us to be flexible because everybody knows it, and yet it's not a social service agency that you might think of for something like this. It also sort of helps us to test the waters. It will indicate where there's a strong demand for services. Part of that is that the expectation with each software license or EFIN is that that site do 50 returns. So if you don't want to commit to 50 returns because you don't know what the take-up is going to be, this is a good way to kind of test the waters and see how strong that demand is going to be. It also makes a great sense in rural areas where there's a really small population and it's too small to really sustain a permanent VITA site. Again, the expectation is that a permanent site is going to produce 50 returns. So in Northeastern Kentucky, the purple area there, this has been a huge help in the way that we've gone about establishing and then expanding that coalition. It's going into its 3rd year, serves 10 counties in Northeastern Kentucky, which is rural Appalachia. And it's previously led by my coworker here at KDBA, but we've worked really closely with the Gateway Community Action Agency, and they're going to take over the leadership of the coalition, which we're really excited about. Our key partners in that area are our member domestic violence programs. We have a county library that's hosting a site, a housing organization that's hosting a site, the extension office. I know that was mentioned in the previous presentation as well. We have a lot of support from our extension office, and then again in the Northeastern, another community action agency that hosts the site. So last year, that coalition in purple that you just saw did 498 returns. 96 of them were done by our mobile site, so as ad hoc visits, basically. And due to demand that we've determined during these visits, we're going to have 2 additional permanent sites. So we went to sites on an ad hoc basis and had so much response that we've decided that those are places that we need to establish a permanent site. One of those is in Berea College, and it's actually just outside that coalition, but still the demographics are similar. It's rural Appalachian community. There's a small liberal arts college there that's also a major employer in the area. So not only do we have students, but we have a lot of employers at Berea College who are eligible for the free tax preparation, and many of whom are eligible for earned income credits. And for the last 2 years, that's been a mobile site, but we're really excited this year that they have found a site manager and volunteers to run their own site. For those of you who are involved in this work already, I'm sure that you already know this, our major challenges are volunteer recruitment and organizational capacity, and those are intrinsically linked. It's hard to recruit volunteers in rural areas, especially I would say in rural Appalachia. Because it's hard to recruit volunteers, we rely a lot on agency staff to volunteer their time. But when those agencies have limited capacity, limited funding, limited staff, that makes it really hard to keep the sites open. So those are our big challenges that we're always sort of trying to be creative to work around. My advice for rural practitioners is to engage volunteers in a variety of ways. They don't all have to be tax preparers, because we know that that can be intimidating to some people. There are other ways for them to be involved. So you just definitely want to engage them and not eliminate people who want to be involved but are just nervous about preparing someone else's taxes. And also, you're going to hear more about virtual VITA, and the new models that are suggested really lend themselves to other volunteer roles. And you also want to use the partnerships that you have to include EITC outreach and tax prep. If you're doing work with lower income people, a lot of those partnerships are already in place, and you just need to utilize those channels. And don't be afraid to try new things. One of our exciting initiatives last year, we had one of our coalitions did a savings bond initiative, and they had almost 150 taxpayers invest more than $25,000 in savings bonds, which was pretty neat.